Before I start this on gold, I want to ask you, what is Donald Trump? Is Donald Trump a guy who likes to cut the spending? No. He believes in debt, right? But what he believes in more than debt is growing the bottom line. So you grow your way out of things. So keep that in mind as I'm trying to make sense of gold. And what I'm going to share with you is just a theory. I think I might be right on this, but I don't know. Okay. Gold is rocketing. You know, it's now almost, what is it, $4,300 or $4,400 an ounce today. And I've always told you, you don't want to see a world with $5,000 an ounce gold. That is, when $5,000 an ounce happens, that means the trust is going away for the financial system and the financial markets. The dollar is starting to weaken, and the world is sending a signal. We don't trust any of this anymore. Now, that may be true. That may be true. But let me take you to another place, because maybe something that is happening that doesn't fit that script, because you're dealing with something new. You're dealing with Donald Trump. So I think behind all of it, there is a new strategy that is taking shape in Washington. Congress, doesn't have the stomach to cut any of the spending. And Donald Trump believes the opposite. Grow your way out. Okay. So that's a recipe for deficit that is really quite frightening. But there is someone, and I think it's Bessent, who is finding a way to pull down the deficit without the usual political bloodshed. One of the misunderstood tools in that strategy is something that you're going to be amazed that it hasn't happened before. It is the revaluation of gold. Right now, the government values its gold reserves. We have 260 million troy ounces. That's what they say officially. We might have none. But we have 260 million troy ounces. But we only value it at $35 an ounce. Why? Because that's the price FDR in the 1930s set gold at and said it's worth $35 an ounce. That hasn't changed. So on paper, that means the government, all of our gold that we have on paper, the whole gold hoard, is only worth $9 billion. So wait a minute. But the market price today is almost $4,500, which would make that $9 billion actually worth $1.1 trillion. Now think about that. The United States is sitting on $1 trillion asset, and we don't even count it. Why does this matter? I want you to think of your home. Imagine you're going into a bank and you want to go buy a car, okay? And you have your salary and you're in debt and you're just barely making it. But your home on paper has only been valued at $5,000 because when your parents bought it all those years ago, it was $5,000, and now you're sitting here and it hasn't changed in value. It has in reality, but you're still counting it as the bank and saying, yeah, well, my grandfather or my father paid $5,000 for this. And so it's worth $5,000. The bank would know, no, it's not. It's worth $1 million today. What changes if this is called mark to market? This is a usual thing. You mark the price to what the market value is. Your price of your house goes down. You are poorer on paper because the value of your house has gone down and it's marked to market. If the price has gone from $35 an ounce to $4,500 an ounce, then you mark to market and everything changes. Suddenly, if that's your house, $5,000 to $1 million, now you can buy that new car. You walk into the bank and you're like, I'm going to buy a $50,000 car. And they're like, well, let me see your assets. And you're like, oh, well, you have a house that's been paid off and it's worth $1 million. Where yesterday it was worth $5,000. Today it's worth $1 million because it's actually worth that if you sold it. And so the bank goes like, oh, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, sure. Here's 50 grand. Go buy that car. suddenly your profile looks different overnight. Okay? That is what I believe is coming in America. I believe they're going to revalue gold. That without raising taxes, without cutting a single program, it would instantly improve the nation's balance sheet. Our debt to asset ratio would shift dramatically. Have you noticed in the last year, everybody's like, their debt to asset ratio is way out of whack, and they're now 125%, whatever it is. Okay, that would change. The dollar would legitimately appear to be stronger, and the deficit, at least on paper, would shrink. Now, add to that, again, what Donald Trump believes, and you may not agree with it, but he believes I can grow the economy. So you combine that with the H-1B visa fees, you do the tariffs expected, to bring in money, and then also the expected $8 to $12 trillion in foreign capital investments that are flowing into the United States. If all of that is real, suddenly the picture doesn't look quite so desperate, because it looks like we are growing again, and we actually would be growing again. The debt doesn't shrink by cutting. It shrinks by growing. It shrinks by growing the economy and expanding the economy beneath it. That's Trump's mark. That's always what he's believed in. So while I've been sitting here going, you don't want $5,000 gold, you don't, but it also might be a good thing. Let me give you this. There's more. Washington is floating the idea, and Mike Lee got hammered for this, but this is a Bessent idea. Mike Lee is floating the idea of selling off portions of vast federal portfolio. We have all this land. These are not national parks. We have millions of acres of unproductive and unused territory. I have known this from central bankers for 20 years, that they actually have said, we should sell the national parks. You know how much the national parks. I don't want you selling the national parks. What are you talking about? No, we're not selling the national parks. But that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about cutting the inefficiency out of every department and taking land that is unusable and sellable, that the government is holding and doesn't need to hold, selling that land, okay, which would allow us to build more houses, expand, et cetera, and increase the bottom line on the balance sheet. Suddenly, with all of this, the pressure valves are opened up, okay? Also put in here, nobody seems to be panicking about the government shutdown. And what is the government shutdown doing? What is Bessent hoping he gets an opportunity to do? Cut. So now you're expanding with gold, the possibility of selling federal land at some point. You're bringing in $12 trillion of investment. You're getting the raw earth minerals from Venezuela and from South America and elsewhere in the world. You've solved our military peace problem. We're no longer the world's policemen, so we're not having to do all of that stuff, which is a drain on blood and treasure. All of a sudden, you're starting to see that America is actually shoring itself up. So what looks like chaos right now may actually be a controlled implosion of a broken system. Because remember, this is exactly what the left was going to do. The left through the WEF and the Great Reset, they wanted to implode the system, but they had a safety net that we were going to fall into, and that was a global world order. Donald Trump doesn't believe in the global world order, but he does believe we are in trouble. He knows that. He has a different idea. I think we might be seeing a re-anchoring of America's finances in hard assets, real productivity. And if Bessent and the president can pull this off, we may be watching the birth of the building of a new foundation of a new financial order, one where, we're we're regrounding ourselves in value that's actually real. It's dangerous. If confidence breaks, if the terrorists who are already here, thank you, Joe Biden, manage to disrupt the perception of reality, if we start having, real trouble on our streets and we go unstable, then the illusion flips. The revaluation becomes a revelation that even gold cannot cover the sins of a government that has just not paid attention for this long. And, there's no pretending that. But if we can hold together this fragile unity in our country long enough, and they can revalue the system and rejigger the system, keep your eye on gold. It may be the canary in the coal mine. It may be this is real trouble. But remember, not every alarm means disaster. It's how you react to it. I would have told you 4 years ago, and I did, when we said we're gonna kick Russia and China off the SWIFT system. That's a really bad idea because you have no plan, you have no replacement for the SWIFT system. You're now taking the assets of a sovereign country and saying, yeah, we can do that. That will drive the price of the dollar down. People will sell our reserve currencies. And the only thing they had as backup was a global new financial order that none of us wanted. Notice we're not talking about CBDCs. We're talking about gold. This government is Donald Trump is talking about rebalancing and growing, not a global world order. So it could be that the price of gold is, just a fire that could burn out of control, as it would have just a few years ago. And it still may. But it also may be that the rise in gold and what's happening with Donald Trump is a backfire, is when you set fire in a forest fire and you burn back into it to put it out, this may be a fire that we are setting that could put all of this out. This heat may actually forge something new, because I think there's real strategy here. When you look at what I talked to you about a minute ago, why are we bombing those boats? That's strategy for something bigger. That's not a war on drugs. It's not. That's strategy for something bigger. Knowing that he's resetting the entire world, knowing that he likes the revaluation of things, and he likes to grow the asset sheet, knowing he's not a dummy, knowing that he wants to keep America's sovereignty true. Gold will tell the story, whether it's collapse or America's rebirth. One way or another, we're going to know soon. We're going to know soon. Watch gold.